So Donald Trump has been the subject of a lot of hysteria on social media and even some major news outlets. Although for the most part, I think the story hasn't really dominated as much as it has online. And I'm referring to the Epstein file cases, or the Epstein file case, and the innuendo that Trump is going to be one of the names in there, and that he's a bad guy, and that we should all hate him now, and that he's covering it up, blah, blah, blah. But after all this paranoia and wild discussions about it online, to no surprise to this man here, this hasn't actually affected Donald Trump with his base. In fact, he is reaching new heights of approval rating within the Republican base. Why is this happening? Well, it's pretty simple if you think about it. For the last 10 years, Donald Trump has been the subject of endless accusations. They have tried to impeach him multiple times. They've tried to accuse him of sexual assault. They've accused him of rape with the Jean Carroll, or whatever the hell her name was, the Stormy Daniels, the Russia. I mean, it has been endless. And the guy has been effectively bulletproof. And they've never once been able to take him down. And so the Trump supporters, and I'm not talking about the content creators like the Hodgkin twins, like Asmongold, and especially most of the right-wing commentators that have abandoned Trump here to go after him over the Epstein files. The actual voters themselves, guess what? They don't believe it. It's another accusation in an endless stream of accusations that never seem to go anywhere. So they don't care. To give an example of this, this is by Breitbart. They are a conservative news outlet, but we're going to use this story. It's going to talk. They're going to discuss CNN here. I briefly scanned it before I started reading it, which usually I don't do that. I just read the title, then go into it. But their article here says Trump's popularity grows with Republicans amid Epstein uproar. New poll shows President Donald Trump's approval among Republicans has risen, not fallen, despite nonstop social media backlash over the Epstein case. CNN chief data analyst Harry Enten admitted this week that he was surprised. He's always surprised when it comes to Trump's ratings, by the way, to find that Trump's standing with Republican voters has strengthened despite widespread complaints on social media about the Epstein files. He said, you think his approval ratings are going down with Republicans, but if anything, they're going up. Let's actually watch the clip here. So this is the clip from CNN.
I mean, look, I think this one surprised me a bit because of all of these complaints online going after Trump and the Epstein files. You might think his approval ratings were going down with Republicans. If anything, they're going up. Republicans who approve of Trump, look at our CNN poll. The prior one, 86%. The one out this week, 88% were Republicans. How about Quinnipiac?
And again, this should not come as a surprise. How many times has Trump been accused of something and come out completely spotless, without, completely scot-free? At this point, you cannot cry wolf endlessly against one man and then expect people to care, even if you have something. But there's more than there's a bigger reason too why this doesn't matter to Trump's supporters. And this boils down to the fact that no matter how you slice it, it is not the most important thing on the docket right now. Saving the country is the most important thing to Trump's voters. And what do I mean by that? Well, it's pretty simple. Donald Trump became the primary head for the Republican Party back in 2015, 2016, because he was anti-illegal immigration, which is an infestation in the U.S. that is literally destroying this country from within. We're seeing this replicated, by the way, all throughout Europe and the UK. Immigration in mass quantities will destroy a society. All Western civilization right now is under threat and in peril. Trump's voters saw this. There had been, at the start of this millennia, there were at least 8 to 11 million, let's say, confirmed aliens in the country. Now, that number officially has never changed, but now we know it's somewhere between 20 and 30 million at least. maybe more, but certainly not less. And so, with this many people, and there have been 9 attempts at granting these aliens amnesty by the Democrat Party since 2000, and we go back in time and we look at what happened to California, where there were 2.7 million aliens granted amnesty in 1986, and half of them resided in California. And California, which had been a Republican state, purple red like Texas, had voted Republican for 30 years in every presidential election, flipping blue like that. Republicans understood that this was endgame from a political standpoint for the Republican Party if amnesty were ever granted on a much larger scale. But I think it goes beyond that now. Now we're talking about the very future of the country at stake, because the Democrat Party is run by a bunch of idiots who don't understand that even if they were to grant amnesty and get this massive control, this many non-citizens who are not assimilating with your culture, who are balkanizing, will end in tyranny and death. This has happened many times throughout known history. You cannot bring in millions and millions of non-citizens into your country and expect it to remain the same much longer.
Quinnipiac, the prior poll, 87% approval of Republicans. This week out, 90% with Republicans. If anything, Donald Trump's approval rating has gone up since this whole Epstein saga started. He is at the apex, or close there too, in terms of his popularity with Republican voters. Epstein
Not a surprise.
Complaints or not.
You just proved that not everything online is real.
Yes.
Well, that goes without saying. That's been a constant theme for a very long time. I mean, Twitter historically has been full of bots, as are many other social media platforms, which allows fake outrage to percolate easily by a handful of people and make it look like hundreds of thousands of people are outraged.
Who knew? Who knew?
Amazing.
Twitter and X are not reality.
Is there any reason that you can find that this hasn't taken hold and hurt him?
Yeah. I mean, on X, all you hear about is the Epstein files. But how about out in the real public? Republicans who said the top issue was Epstein case. The answer is one, and not 1%. One respondent. This is a great little finding that Ariel Edwards-Levy, who of course is part of our polling unit, found. Just one single Republican said that the nation's top problem is in fact the Epstein case. Not much of a surprise that therefore Donald Trump's approval rating has not suffered with Republicans because of the Epstein case, because the bottom line is most Americans say it's not up high.
Exactly. Immigration is likely number one. In fact, if you want to know how Donald Trump could have his base implode, it would be if he walked back his illegal immigration, his mass deportation stance. That is the one thing that Donald Trump could mess up on here that would derail his presidency, because that is the number one issue for Republicans, followed closely by the economy. But number one is going to be illegal immigration, because Republicans understand that Donald Trump is an anomaly. There have been no presidents, whether left or right, in the last 25 years who have cared about the illegal immigration problem in the sense of getting rid of them. So there is the understanding that if you do not deport, now that future presidents are likely not to follow in the same footsteps, which means that you will have these people in perpetuity, these aliens staying in the country, and they will eventually get amnesty. So this is end game. So Donald Trump is going to effectively be bulletproof with his base unless he backstabs his base with illegal immigration. That's why when there was the idea being floated around of maybe, not directly saying amnesty, but floating the idea of soft amnesty to farm workers and to hotel workers, etc. That's why the backlash there was real and swift, and why Trump kind of brought it back, say, well, no, there's no amnesty. Because there is an understanding that is the one thing that could destroy his support. And Donald Trump, as long as he maintains that support, isn't going anywhere. All these people can complain and moan and bitch, but in the end, it's all meaningless unless you have actual proof, right? Instead of innuendo, which, if I'm being honest, I've never once believed we were going to see the Epstein files, the Epstein list. I always assumed that it was destroyed. If such a thing actually existed by the time you had Biden in office, I always figured it would have been destroyed then. So, maybe I'm jaded, maybe I'm black-pilled, but I never believed we would actually see it. It'd be nice. I just don't think it's going to happen. And so when it comes to innuendo and suggestions and, theories being put out there about, well, maybe Trump is blah, 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 blah. We've got 10 years of this. No one's going to care in the Republican Party. So anyway, Breitbart goes on to say that all of this comes after Trump blasted what he called the Jeffrey Epstein hoax in a recent Truth Social post, accusing the radical left Democrats of launching yet another smear campaign to distract from his incredible and unprecedented success. And I will say it is pretty ironic that the story suddenly became a thing right after you had the passing of the big beautiful bill, as Trump likes to call it, and after you had massive success everywhere for Donald Trump, the Iran-Israel crisis, how all of that was basically a nothing burger. I mean, everywhere you look, Donald Trump, when it comes to his promises to his base, has been delivering. And with the illegal immigration, the out and out, pushback that he and his administration has done to, say, like California or Chicago. And when you look at Alligator Alcatraz, all of these things are wildly popular with his base and wildly popular with Latinos, for example, who want illegal immigration out of the country. Everything he is doing is connecting. The Democrat Party, on the other hand, has nothing going for them. They're the party of they're the party of hate and Donald Trump and Orange Man bad and Hitler. That's all they got. Or you got Zoran Mondani, the communist. There's nothing right now that the Democrat Party has that says that they have any chance going forward to regain power. So needing to derail Trump is priority one. Not saying that that's what this is, but it also wouldn't surprise me if it turned out to be the case. So who knows? But all the online hair pulling, panic. I was out sick last week, so I didn't really get a chance to weigh in on it. And but I was telling people that I knew, acquaintances or friends, that were panicking about it or discussing the story or like excited that finally they're going to get Trump, depending on which side of the aisle, depending on the different, because I have friends from all sides of the political spectrum. And I told everyone that I talked to about it, I think it's going to be a nothing burger. I think that a Republican Party, the American people at large, are not going to get all hopped up on the Epstein case, especially when there's no definitive proof or evidence. They're just not going to, because how many times has there been this, Trump has done this thing, Trump has done that, Trump is a criminal, blah, blah, blah. People are tired of it. It's par for the course. It's just, it's another Democrat campaign. They shot their load too many times. How many times have we discussed impeachments? The fact that they're even trying to discuss it again. Oh, we need to impeach Trump. How many times are you going to do this? At some point, it loses all credibility. It loses all value. And I think that's what we're seeing now. So, to wrap up the Breitbart article, they say, Trump rejected former allies who have embraced the narrative and declared, I don't want their support anymore. Ding, ding. That's how he's going to go about this, because in the end, a lot of these content creators, either because some were angry because they were embarrassed over okay, here's what I think. Now, this is just a complete random theory. I don't claim to know anything. I don't talk to anybody in the administration. I don't have any political insight outside of what I think is common sense. But what I think happened here is pretty simple. Trump, day one, signs the let's declassify and release all the Epstein and JFK stuff. So he goes and does that. Pam Bondi, because don't forget, in the first term, the previous attorney general, I forget his name right now, but the guy that famously said, the border is closed, and then proceeded to just screw Trump every step of the way, ended up having to get booted out. Donald Trump had a terrible attorney general the first time around. Pam Bondi was brought in for a couple of very specific goals. They knew in advance that they were going to get corrupt judges. They were going to get political grandstanding. And so the goal was to flood the zone, mass amounts of executive orders, and then have Pam Bondi run cover with the lawsuits. And also try, and once they realized how the corrupt judges were going to go, and the sanctuary states, the corrupt political figures who were going to actively try to sabotage the effort, the job for Pam Bondi was to go after these people, not only fight the court cases against the corrupt judges, but also prosecute people who were breaking the law. That's where her focus, I believe, was. And so when the Epstein stuff comes in, and she famously comes out and says, and she only came out, by the way, if my memory serves, because I had this big dossier that was supposed to be a phase one. We got a whole bunch of stuff to reveal. And whoever sends her the files, I don't think she really ever paid attention to it. I don't think Pam Bondi cares about the Epstein stuff. I think her focus is elsewhere. Not that she doesn't care, but it's not high on her priority list. And I think if I had to guess, I think the real here was Pam Bondi saying, yeah, I've got this stuff on my desk, blah, 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 and not really paying attention to what's there. So you get these Republican conservatives, these MAGA social media people who get these Epstein dossiers, which are giant nothing burgers, and they're embarrassed. Well, rather than then saying, oops, we fucked up, there's a doubling down on it. And of course, then there's no there. And so you got the axe to grind from these political commentators. You have the Democrat Party, which is hoping and praying for something. You've got Elon Musk stirring the pot. And then you've got new content creators to the space who aren't a part of any group, but they're there to get views and clicks, right? So you got content creators like Asmongold, who is a brilliant live streamer. And the guy is going to be big. I mean, he's already big now, but I think he's going to be somebody that people will be watching down the road. He has a bright, bright future. And he has a lot of great takes. He'll get his L's from time to time, but the guy knows what he knows how to deliver content, and he's got pretty rational takes most of the time. So you got him jumping in on this because it's that's something that he's very much interested in, and his audience reacts. So online there's a huge swell of interest in this story. But with the GOP, with the conservative commentators, there's a lot of animus there and a push to force Trump to operate the way they want to, or to stir drama, whether because they believed it or whether because they wanted clicks, which means monetization. Who knows? But the bottom line is, you've got a story that's spinning, but it's not going anywhere, and I don't know. So Donald Trump doesn't like people stabbing in the back. And and the reality is he doesn't need these people to spread his message. He's very good at doing that himself. So who knows where the story will go, but I don't expect we will ever find anything that groundbreaking with the Epstein stuff. I hope I'm wrong. It would be fascinating to see what really was going on behind the scenes. But I think at the end of the day, we're never really going to know what happened here. I think, if I'm being honest, I think that most of the stuff was long since scrubbed. Anything of value. There's no way the deep state, if you will, would allow something that could destroy them just to sit around waiting for someday some person with a moral compass to become commander in chief. So that's just what I always thought about it. But who knows? Who knows?